Imagine one day you receive a message saying that in 15 days, the world will end, and you need to train your strength and endurance, learn kendo, and other skills to increase your chances of survival. You decide to follow the message and quit your job to start training. However, it wasn't just a message but a survival guide for the apocalypse you got after helping a monster in danger on the street. After 15 days, you're transported to an area where you must kill as many monsters as possible to level up. But every time you level up, the system resets you to the previous level, although you keep the points to enhance your stats. This amazing story begins with our protagonist waking up at 7 a.m. to start a 10 kilometers run. By noon, he's training headbutts 500 times, and by 5 p.m., he's doing 3 major exercises: bench press, squats, and deadlifts, each for 10 sets of 10 reps. To repeat this routine for 14 days, he had to quit his job. People asked if he was crazy, and maybe he was, because one day, a status window appeared before him, stating, "The apocalypse gate is opening. Time until apocalypse, 0 days, 0 hours, 0 minutes, 5 seconds." This announcement basically said the world was about to end. As the last seconds ticked down, we flash back to 15 days ago when people started receiving messages that monsters had appeared near Mount Angwan. So, residents in the area had to evacuate immediately if they saw monsters. However, monsters appeared in many areas and mountains nationwide. Then, people received live video links showing real monsters appearing. A guy close to a monster was terrified and said there were real monsters. When the monster noticed the guy, he told the audience to get closer, but viewers told him to look behind. But the monster was already too close, as the guy thought the monster couldn't move. Hearing the guy scream, our protagonist, Lee Hoyoung, watching the video, cursed in surprise, wondering why the video looked so real. But he realized he was still receiving disaster warning messages, wondering what was happening. Lee Hoyoung, 29 years old, upon seeing signs of a trap, said that making a living was already hard, and now there are monsters. No one would believe it. He sighed, saying there had been too many fake videos recently. But right then, he noticed a small monster trapped in a snare. Seeing the monster, the MC wondered why there was a monster there. Despite his fear, he remembered he had a math class with a professor. But when the monster saw him leaving, it started growling, then acted friendly. The MC saw it asking for help, but even though it tried to be cute, he was still scared. Looking into the monster's bright eyes, the MC said he was human and it was a monster, and no one was kind enough to help a monster. He closed his eyes, saying he couldn't help the monster despite its pleading look. But the monster showed him a picture, hinting it had a family. Cut to Lee Hoyoung, astonished to find himself holding a silver goblin pill after helping the monster and receiving a gift. He couldn't believe it was a real monster. The MC wondered what the silver goblin pill was and what kind of hologram system this was. When the system told him to take the pill, he wondered who in their right mind would take such a suspicious thing. Right then, the TV announced breaking news that giant buildings of unknown origin had appeared worldwide, and the US military lost contact when entering one of these towers. The newscaster said the appearance of monsters and towers indicated that the apocalypse had truly begun. Hearing the news, Lee Hoyoung saw an explosion outside his apartment. He quickly turned to see what happened, seeing people running chaotically and a giant tower appearing. The broadcast announced that giant towers had appeared in South Korea as well. The MC clenched his fist, looked back at the system, and wondered if this was the right decision. As he started to take the pill, he said this was the one time to do something crazy, then swallowed the pill. A green light began to emanate from him, and the system announced, "You have received the Sage's status window." The Sage's status window provides the highest survival rate in the current situation. A book-like object began to appear before him. Lee Hoyoung opened the book, and a green light shone. The system announced, "The apocalypse gate is opening. Time remaining until the apocalypse, 15 days, 4 hours, 12 minutes, 52 seconds. Please prepare for the end. Recommended tasks: strength training, cardio training, and learning kendo." Back to the present, Lee Hoyoung had started following the guide and spent 15 days only training. When the apocalypse came, he was transported to an entirely different place. Looking around and seeing a sword, he said this was different from what he imagined. The system announced, "The game begins now. Starting guide. Attitude test completed. Based on data analysis, you will be assigned to the most suitable class. Your class is Combat Swordsman. Please open the status window to see details." So, after opening the status window, he said there was too much to read, including his stats as a level 1 combat swordsman, with endurance 14, strength 11, agility 7, sensitivity 8, and 0 remaining points. Then he exclaimed that this meant everything would truly start from now. Please complete one of the two objectives. First option, survive in this forest for 60 minutes. Second option, find the exit and escape from here. MC, after seeing the options, opened the sage's status window, which would provide the highest survival rate guidance in his current situation. Use the 60 minutes in the guide stage and kill as many monsters as possible, as the second option will reduce your growth potential and is not recommended. Li Huiyang, seeing the instructions, realized he could also use the sage's status window. He figured the sage's window had told him to train because it knew this situation would come. According to the instructions, he needed to hunt monsters and definitely shouldn't choose to escape the forest. But right then, from the bushes emerged a creature, and Li Huiyang wondered if it was a monster because it looked cuter than he expected. Level 1 Unicorn Panda. Immediately, the Unicorn Panda's face changed to a threatening look and it charged at Li Huiyang. However, with his basic swordsmanship skills, Li Huiyang easily took down the monster. You have killed the Unicorn Panda and gained experience. As the panda's spirit floated up to meet its maker, Li Huiyang marveled that it went down with just one basic sword strike. It seemed pretty weak, probably because it was a tutorial monster. However, he noted that basic swordsmanship consumed 2 MP and he only had 10 MP, so he could only use it 5 times. This meant he needed to conserve his MP while hunting. He continued eliminating more unicorn pandas. You have gained experience. You are now level 2. You have gained HP and MP. You will receive points every time you level up and can use those points to enhance your stats. Remaining points, 2. Seeing this message, he was delighted, noting he'd leveled up just in time as his mana was nearly depleted. But then, he noticed the window displaying the remaining points began to disappear. Adjusting player level, you are now level 1. Due to having the sage's status window, you will level up slower than other players. He was shocked by this notification and couldn't believe they took away the level he'd gained. He wondered when he would be able to level up again. While he found this disadvantage rather amusing, he opened his status window, surprised to see he still had remaining points. Li Huiyang speculated that if his guess was right, this wasn't a penalty but a beneficial glitch. He resumed defeating monsters to gain experience and leveled up to level 2 again. But due to the penalty, he was reverted back to level 1, still retaining his stat points. Delighted, he noted that the higher the level, the more experience needed for the next level, so enhancing his stats this way was easier than leveling up normally. He decided to enhance his stats, with options being energy, agility, perception, and strength. For a combat swordsman, strength and agility were the best choices since strength made attacks stronger and agility increased speed and reflexes. But what he needed most now was perception. Perception increased by 4 points. After boosting his perception, he quickly took down another unicorn panda. But he noted that the unicorn panda wasn't as strong as he'd expect from a tutorial monster, as he could easily defeat it even with basic stats. Remembering the instructions to kill as many monsters as possible, he wondered how many unicorn pandas he could find in the time limit. Now, finding the pandas was much easier with his higher perception stat and the feeling he could sense some kind of aura at a perception level of 20. Just as Li Huiyang had defeated all the monsters, a level 2 alpha unicorn panda appeared behind him. While Li Huiyang wondered what kind of monster it was, the alpha unicorn panda charged at him at high speed. He barely dodged the attack, and upon closer inspection, noted it was quite fast and resembled a rhino, making him wonder if it was the boss. As he stood up, the alpha unicorn panda charged at him again with high speed. Ultimately, he defeated the alpha unicorn panda. You have defeated the boss, alpha unicorn panda. You have completed the hidden quest, reward, gold. After defeating it and receiving the notification, he remarked that he was technically at level 7. But just then, the tutorial phase ended, and he hadn't realized so much time had passed. As Li Huiyang celebrated finishing the tutorial, he fell silent upon finding himself in a completely different place with many others. From a loudspeaker, a voice welcomed everyone, congratulating them on completing the tutorial phase. They were now in the tower lobby, Area C, 2567. Hearing this, Li Huiyang looked around, noticing 14 men and 11 women, wondering if they too had completed the tutorial and been brought here. Everyone was panicking, understandably so, since the world had changed drastically in a day. Had he not known the world was ending, he would have panicked like them. Clenching his fist, he told himself to stay calm to survive. Then, we see a girl asking where they were, and someone answered they were in the final tower. The girl, looking to see who spoke, saw a small rabbit. The rabbit greeted everyone, saying he was the handsome guy of the tower and in charge of the bottom floor, named Khan Khan. Everyone, surprised by the rabbit, wondered where he came from and if he was a kid in a rabbit suit. Kan sighed, saying that was a typical response. Just then, Li Huiyang interrupted, asking if he could ask a question. If this was truly the apocalypse, what should they do? This question caught the rabbit off guard, who then pointed at Li Huiyang, complimenting it as a good question. With a change in tone, Kan explained that the 22 players here would participate in a life-threatening game, causing everyone to break out in a cold sweat. He added that all humans on Earth were now in this tower, and they would undertake missions on each floor to climb to the top. Li Huiyang asked if they could return to their normal lives once they reached the top of the tower. But the rabbit chuckled, saying he didn't know. Li Huiyang then inquired about the purpose of climbing the tower. The rabbit responded that there was no need to search for meaning, as only death awaited those who didn't climb. Turning serious, the rabbit mentioned that many had died in the tutorial phase. Hearing this, Li Huiyang wondered why he hadn't thought of that, as it was just the tutorial, but surely many couldn't make it through. He imagined children and the elderly, realizing the gravity of it. Before he could finish his thought, the rabbit interrupted, asking if anyone wanted to try killing him, as he needed to die to go home and there was a special reward for whoever helped. Li Huiyang wondered if it was a trap. The rabbit didn't seem strong, but he couldn't defeat a level 55 creature, so he decided to observe. However, the instructions told him to help the floor manager get home. Li Huiyang received this message, thinking it might be okay to attack the rabbit, and had never been harmed by following the instructions. Yet, he questioned whether it was worth the risk. At that moment, someone said they would do it, as if the rabbit wanted to die, they would kill it. While the little rabbit cheerfully asked if he could go home, the guy with the sneer on his face drew his sword and said the rabbit would regret it because he planned to make the rabbit's death as painful as possible. He lunged at the rabbit, but before his sword could connect, he got a powerful smack to the face, sending shivers down everyone's spines. The attacker was none other than the little rabbit, now transformed into a muscular bunny, who casually claimed it was just an accidental counterattack. The sight left everyone speechless. The guy lay motionless on the ground while the others scattered in panic, screaming. Li Huiyang watched the scene unfold and thought to himself that he would have been a goner if he had volunteered. The rabbit, now grinning, said it was all a misunderstanding and asked if there were any other volunteers. Li Huiyang checked his notifications and wondered if the system had tricked him. The bloody rabbit asked again who wanted to help him retire early, but no one dared to respond, including Li Huiyang, who was trembling at the thought of being deceived. At that moment, the system announced, "The Sage's status window has been activated." The Sage's status window allowed him to see the stats of others. Surprised by this new skill, Li Huiyang used it on the rabbit and realized something, chuckling to himself as he finally understood. The rabbit, still friendly, asked once more, and Li Huiyang stepped forward, saying he would do it because the system hadn't lied to him. The rabbit pointed out that Li Huiyang was only level 1, but he replied that level didn't matter when doing a good deed. The rabbit, changing his expression, admitted that might be true. As Li Huiyang prepared himself, the rabbit urged him to hurry up and send him home. But just then, a girl stopped him, arguing it was too dangerous since someone had just died. Others agreed with her, saying it wasn't worth the risk. Li Huiyang reassured them that he had a plan, causing the girl to feel confused. He confidently told her to watch and see something interesting. As the rabbit launched a massive punch at him, Li Huiyang thought there was something off about the rabbit's words. He was certain there were 25 people, but the rabbit had said only 24, suggesting a mistake? No, it was intentional. The rabbit had given the wrong number because only 24 people were actually there, with one being a hologram created by the rabbit. When the rabbit disappeared, praising Li Huiyang's cleverness, the system revealed the rabbit's status, low-level manager. True form is a hologram that vanishes when injured. Before disappearing, the rabbit said those who were brave would have good chances, then vanished. Li Huiyang picked up a small orb left behind by the rabbit, which contained stat points. Someone asked how he knew the rabbit wouldn't kill him. Li Huiyang explained that he had noticed the blood pass through the girl, so her face and clothes should have been stained, leading him to believe it was a ruse. Actually, he had used the sage's skill. At that moment, a red-haired guy claimed it was a waste for Li Huiyang to keep the orb since he had also figured it out. Li Huiyang responded by asking what he meant by waste. The level 4 redhead replied that the fact Li Huiyang was still level 1 after completing the tutorial meant he was either as weak as a mosquito or hadn't killed anything, suggesting he must have been hiding. And since he would die quickly anyway, the redhead proposed that Li Huiyang hand over the orb for the greater good. Li Huiyang held the orb tightly, questioning why this redhead was so arrogant and whether he was serious. Right then, he destroyed the orb, gaining a stat point, because giving it away wasn't his style. The redhead, furious, accused him of being greedy and asked if he was trying to keep pace with his low level. Li Huiyang thought it best to avoid people like him, though he wasn't sure how long he could manage that. Just then, the loudspeaker announced that initial gold would be distributed and players could use it in the shop. Additional gold would be awarded based on the number of monsters they had killed in the tutorial. The speaker mentioned that the highest initial gold amount in this area was 7,400, surprising everyone and making them wonder who had gotten that much. The redhead, receiving 1,300 gold, cursed, saying he could have done better if he had known. His friend, Junsong, got 1,500 gold, saying he didn't know who topped the list but they must be really skilled. Li Huiyang, who received the highest amount, silently acknowledged that it was him but had no intention of revealing it, knowing someone was already envious over just one stat point. When the shop opened, Li Huiyang reviewed his options: buy items, upgrade skills, or increase stats. He decided to boost his strength to 9, resistance to 6, and flexibility to 13, reaching 20 in all stats, with 4,600 gold remaining. Scene transition to the system announcement, starting the third floor mission. The third floor mission is a siege battle. This is the first time you will meet players from other areas. Mission condition: attack, defeat the castle, and capture the altar. Time remaining, 24 hours. Mission failure penalty, unknown. You have received a limited time item, return crystal, usable only on the third floor. Li Huiyang tried to decipher the return crystal's function. A player looked at the castle and asked if they had to kill people. Another asked about the return crystal. Just then, the system notified Li Huiyang of something, and he understood the return crystal's function. He called the redhead to start the attack, reminding him he had promised to do anything needed. Scene transition to the redhead climbing the castle, placing his hand on his neck, and thinking Li Huiyang could have told him he wouldn't really die, as the return crystal would bring him back to the starting point upon death. Reaching the castle gate, he remembered Li Huiyang saying he would get gold for scouting, so he excitedly shouted he would destroy everything inside and started banging on the gate. The system announced, castle gate durability decreased by 81%. Castle gate durability decreased by 40%. The redhead kept pounding until he fully destroyed it. Castle gate opened for 2 seconds before resetting. Entering the castle, he thought no gate could withstand his strength. Castle gate reset. Just then, he saw 2 guards on the wall and 10 people around the altar. He remembered Li Huiyang saying not to kill anyone to keep the return crystal's function a secret. But with a big grin, he thought even if the protagonist said not to, they were just cowards, and he would destroy everything. He was immediately attacked, hit in the face, and bleeding, wondering what just happened. Looking up at the altar, he wondered if it was a gun. Back to Li Huiyang, the redhead recounted being shot with some magic bullet that hurt like hell. Li Huiyang thought it was crazy, as guns shouldn't exist yet, even Sei Chang, a soldier, didn't have one. But there was another possibility, the star assassin. He thought the battle would be tough. Isiol pulled him back, saying not to worry, she would support him, and not just her, all the other players were ready too. Li Huiyang smiled confidently, saying he would explain the plan. Scene transition to the castle, where a player was very anxious and scared, and we saw the gun-wielding figure on the castle wall. Perched atop a player, however, the other players also looked scared. Then we transitioned to the MC, who was making the most of the great benefits from the second floor mission, which included incredible long-distance observation. Seeing the players, the MC noted there were only 2 guards on the castle wall, as Pelorojo mentioned. When Pelorojo approached the castle, Jiziel told the MC that if Pelorojo returned, the enemy would realize the function of the return crystals. The MC responded that they wouldn't know for sure, they might think so but couldn't be certain, and likely they'd believe it was something only Pelorojo could do. At that moment, the players in the castle began aiming their bows and arrows at Pelorojo, causing him to yell, "This is totally different from earlier." But just as quickly, MC destroyed 2 arrows and leaped onto Pelorojo's shoulders, launching into the castle and swiftly taking down 2 enemy players since they only had one chance. Seo Juno, who witnessed MC's actions, laughed loudly and said the enemies would soon figure out how to use the return crystal after missing the first strike, so they needed to defeat them quickly. The group advanced to the castle gate, where Pelorojo declared that he could break the door with just 5 punches, and everyone needed to stick close to him. As he prepared to punch, the door was struck, its durability dropped to 0%, and it couldn't recover. As MC looked around to check the team's status, a player on the ground asked why MC spared them, saying this half-hearted attitude would get him killed. MC saw this and thought it could be a possibility, and indeed, the girl was actually a star assassin with a combat swordsman level 13, equipped with level 3 magic bullet skills, and stats over 20 with 16,000 gold. Seeing her stats, MC was astonished that she was truly a star assassin and had to defeat everyone on the second floor to reach level 3. But at that moment, the girl named Seol recognized MC and shot him. MC shielded himself with the castle wall and used a recovery potion, thinking he didn't expect her to shoot from that distance. She was more hostile than he thought. He was glad he had prepared advanced leather armor, with 0 physical defense and plus 50% magic defense. Observing Seol, MC noticed each magic bullet consumed 10 MP, and if she used the same shop rank as him, she couldn't buy mana recovery items. Knowing this, MC rushed down, and his teammates followed, thinking the star assassin only had 13 magic bullets left, so they had to reach the altar quickly. The assassin shot a player, who recalled MC saying she couldn't use bullets to seriously injure Pelorojo because magic bullets consumed MP. Seo Juno realized her MP level was crucial, and MC confirmed this. During the battle, the player who was shot recovered, and the group advanced toward the altar. The assassin kept shooting, but MC's group continually healed thanks to Jiziel's skills. The assassin, frustrated, kicked a chair and ordered her team to advance, targeting MC. MC thought the battle's outcome would be decisive, and if they fought, the team would die from magic bullets, so they needed to reach the altar quickly. 2 opponents attacked, MC dodged the first and kicked hard, then took down the second. But just then, a magic bullet aimed at his head. Seo Juno blocked with his sword and lost his weapon. The star assassin realized this and shot Seo Juno in the head, taking him down. MC saw his teammate fall, thinking more people would die each moment, and angrily gripped his sword, activating his level 3 swordsman skill. Then we moved to Pelorojo, who was facing 2 enemy players. Pelorojo used his skills, saying they were done for because his brother had reached the altar, so no need to hold back anymore. With that, he used a level 2 kick-punch combo, knocking out the 2 opponents. Back to our protagonist, the star assassin asked Lee Hoyoung how he could be so strong at just level 2. MC laughed and asked if she found it odd that she reached level 13 so quickly. This question made the star assassin ponder. Just then, the platform beneath them began to glow, and the system announced, "You have captured altar 1 out of 3. Eliminate opponents from the altar." Hearing the announcement, Lee Hoyoung thought they needed 3 people to fully capture the altar, but first, they had to defeat the opponents. The assassin quickly shot, but MC was just as quick, countering with his sword. She blocked the strike with her weapon, wondering how MC could react so fast. The protagonist prepared to strike a powerful blow. The assassin jumped to dodge, and shot twice, but she was surprised when MC dodged both. MC laughed, thinking a swordsman like him and Seo Juno, one of the strongest players in the area, used to be called a ping-pong genius for accurately predicting the ball's trajectory in professional matches. As the level of play increased, reading opponents' movements and predicting the ball's path became harder, and Seo Juno had the nickname Prediction Genius for this ability. After the assassin dodged MC's attack, she looked at him, thinking this guy had higher stats than her. At that moment, Sechin told MC they were done, and Pelorojo reminded them to finish quickly before the enemies returned. Hearing this, the assassin asked if the return crystal's function was resurrection, and MC replied yes, but knowing it now was useless. He looked at her seriously, thinking even if she had hidden skills, he could withstand them, and needed to take the risk to end it all. Right then, the assassin asked if the protagonist thought he had won, and she was spending all her gold to upgrade her shooting skill to level 4. Seeing this, MC rushed forward but was shot down by her. While his teammates ran to him, calling his name, the system announced, "3rd floor mission complete." Don't forget to like, and if you enjoyed this content, subscribe and hit the bell so YouTube notifies you when new videos are up. The redhead angrily shouted about the high cost of skill upgrades. Lee Hoyoung, standing behind him, thought he should also upgrade his basic swordsmanship. After doing so, he decided it was time for a wardrobe change since he couldn't keep wearing his gym uniform. At that moment, a level 3 girl named Jiziel interrupted, asking for his advice. Lee Hoyoung asked why she would seek advice from a level 1. Jiziel laughed, saying she was impressed by his bravery aside from his level. Lee Hoyoung used his skill to check her stats, discovering she was a healer with 800 gold. Knowing this, Li Huiyang asked how much gold she had, and she readily admitted to having 800. Finding her honesty refreshing, he decided to keep his skill usage secret. He asked if she enjoyed exercising, and she replied she didn't mind walking. Li Huiyang suggested her stamina might be lacking, surprising Jiziel because it was true. He advised her to invest in stamina, explaining that even with gold, she couldn't use items for long without good stamina. Jiziel agreed to follow his advice. Just then, the loudspeaker announced the first floor mission would start soon, requiring players to form groups of 3. Those without a group would be randomly assigned. They had 30 minutes to decide. Li Huiyang, hearing the announcement, thought he had expected group missions but not this soon. Junsong suggested everyone reveal their levels to make forming groups easier. People started disclosing their levels and forming groups with those they wanted. Jiziel asked Li Huiyang if he wanted to team up with her, making her his first group member since he had no reason to refuse a healer. However, the other responses were all apologies, as they needed to think before joining his group. Even with a healer, they probably didn't want to team up with a level 1 swordsman. The level 4 players quickly formed their groups, leaving those who didn't complete a group in 30 minutes to be randomly assigned. When the random group assignments were made, the first floor mission began, and someone commented on their bad luck. It was the redhead, who couldn't believe he was grouped with the useless guy. Li Huiyang thought it ironic that the redhead was less popular despite being level 4 and wondered if they could cooperate. But it didn't matter anymore, they had to make it work. Looking up, he resolved to survive no matter what. The scene shifted to them observing a village, needing to complete the system's task of wiping out the kobold tribe within 12 hours. The redhead arrogantly declared he would handle the tribe himself and told Li Huiyang not to get in his way. Li Huiyang reminded him it was a group mission, but the redhead threatened, saying he allowed Li Huiyang to follow from behind. Li Huiyang asked right away, "You call me a loser, so what else do you have to say?" Seeing the red-haired guy was beyond help, Li Huiyang sighed and said, "Alright, I'll tag along and see how good you really are." As they started towards the tribe, the red-haired guy told Li Huiyang that he'd be following behind him anyway, so why bother reacting uselessly? He only got serious when someone was about to kill him, but the girl watching was worried, wondering if this group was really going to be okay. While the red-haired guy complained about the bugs around them, Li Huiyang thought they needed to complete this mission smoothly. They continued towards the tribe, but seeing all the bugs and insects, Li Huiyang thought, yeah, mountains sure are full of bugs. While he was observing the bugs and cutting some grass, Jiziel appeared, saying the cobalt monsters must be strong. Li Huiyang replied that they might be stronger than a one-horned raccoon, but since they were all at level 1, they could still handle it. He reminded them to be cautious because, after all, this was the Apocalypse Tower. Just then, they saw a level 5 cobalt monster with 6-pack abs and massive legs. Li Huiyang was startled, saying that the difference in power was too big. Jiziel said that the monster was clearly stronger than a one-horned raccoon and asked Li Huiyang what they should do. Li Huiyang suggested they check around first, as there might be more kobolds nearby. But at that moment, the red-haired guy started moving, telling Li Huiyang that hiding like a coward was why he was still at level 1. He charged at the cobalt monster and punched it right in the snout. Jiziel and Li Huiyang were both shocked, but the cobalt monster remained standing. The red-haired guy then readied his left hand for another punch. Li Huiyang couldn't believe how reckless and stubborn he was. Jiziel began using her healing power to assist the red-haired guy, while Li Huiyang scanned the area and luckily didn't see any other kobolds. He looked back at the red-haired guy, noticing the monster's health slowly decreasing. Clearly, he was strong for his level, and with Jiziel's help, they might defeat the monster. But Li Huiyang wondered why the damage was less than expected for his power. At that moment, the system announced, "Cobalt is a passive monster and won't attack unless provoked." Li Huiyang read the message, thinking the red-haired guy had stirred up a hornet's nest for no reason. He skimmed through the guide and realized something important. The scene shifted to the red-haired guy delivering a powerful punch, yelling at the monster to just die already. But he hit a tree because the monster dodged. The tree fell, hitting another kobold, which got angry, making the situation worse as they now had to fight 2 monsters at once. While the red-haired guy tried to hold his ground, he thought he was in big trouble and needed Li Huiyang's help, but Li Huiyang had disappeared. The red-haired guy looked around, thinking the loser had run away. Just then, he was interrupted by the other kobold approaching with a large club. Gizian made a small cut on the kobold, but then she tripped over a rock and fell. She looked back in fear as the monster approached with its club. At that moment, a fruit flew in and was pierced by Li Huiyang's sword, creating a double cut on the kobold. The cuts turned the monster purple, and it exploded. The red-haired guy saw that Li Huiyang had defeated the level 6 Cobalt, and Gizian was also surprised. Li Huiyang smiled, thinking it was no wonder the bugs ate all the other fruits but left that one alone, so he suspected something was wrong. He used the system to analyze it, discovering it was a poison apple, explaining why the bugs avoided it. The system also announced, Cobalt is susceptible to poison, gather poison from the mountains and use it. Li Huiyang laughed loudly, holding the poison apple, saying it was the key to a level 1 mission. The red-haired guy felt annoyed and angry, and Li Huiyang asked Jiziel if she was okay. She said she was fine and thanked him. Li Huiyang remarked that it was unexpected to find another monster drawn in by the red-haired guy, and it would have been very dangerous if he had arrived a bit later. Jiziel laughed and thanked him, saying they couldn't have done it without him. While the red-haired guy listened to the conversation, Jiziel asked where Li Huiyang had gone. Li Huiyang started to answer, but the red-haired guy interrupted, angrily and arrogantly, calling him a loser and accusing him of taking advantage while he fought the monster and then jumping in to steal the final blow. Li Huiyang wondered what nonsense he was talking about. As the red-haired guy walked away, Li Huiyang thought he was a real nutcase. He sighed, thinking that with his way of explaining things, the mission would be even harder. The scene shifted to the Cobalt village, where Li Huiyang easily defeated the monsters with his poison-tipped sword. The red-haired guy told himself that he was famous for his punches and that those monsters could never stop him. While this guy was struggling to take down a single Cobalt, Jiziel and Li Huiyang had already taken down several others. Seeing this, the red-haired guy started cursing, wondering why they made it look so easy. But because he wasn't paying attention to the monsters, he got hit hard, fell to the ground, and was swarmed by the Cobalts. As he was being beaten, he cried out in pain, begging for someone to help him. After getting hit multiple times, the red-haired guy began to cry. But then he realized he wasn't being hit anymore. The monsters were standing still, then suddenly exploded. As the monster debris fell to the ground, Li Huiyang extended a hand to help him up, smiling and asking how he felt about being carried for a while. The red-haired guy's expression changed strangely, and he called Li Huiyang his big brother, surprising both of them. After completing the mission, they returned to the lobby, and the red-haired guy anxiously wondered what he had done. We saw him calling Li Huiyang boss, and promising to serve him. While Jiziel praised Li Huiyang for leveling up, the red-haired guy gritted his teeth, thinking that he had called someone who just reached level 2 his boss. He thought he'd be done for if this got out, but with the honor of Kim Se-jong, he couldn't go back on his word. Li Huiyang noticed his strange behavior and wondered if he needed to go to the bathroom. Jiziel noticed no one else was there, concluding that they were the first to finish the mission. Li Huiyang said it seemed they had finished the mission faster than the others because they were lucky to find the Cobalt's weakness. Jiziel said it wasn't luck but Li Huiyang's observational skills, and she would never have thought of using poison. Li Huiyang laughed, saying without her support, things would have been much harder, but he still felt like a fraud. A little later, the other groups started coming out of the gate. Li Huiyang noticed that the group of Ode Kim Junsong and Seo Juno had returned, likely having found the poison apples too, and wondered if the other groups were okay. After a few minutes, 2 people emerged from the gate, falling to the ground, injured and exhausted. Jiziel asked what had happened to the third person, and they tearfully recalled their fallen teammate. The speaker announced that the level 1 mission was complete for all groups, but Jiziel shouted that someone hadn't returned. The speaker responded that 6 groups had returned safely, and the other players hadn't. Li Huiyang thought he hadn't expected everyone to return safely, but losing 8 people was too high a number, and he wondered how many more would die before reaching the top. The loudspeaker continued to announce that the groups who completed the mission first would each receive 1,000 gold. The red-haired guy saw his reward, tears welling up as he covered his mouth, realizing they really were the first. Li Huiyang checked his status window and saw he received 2,000 gold from 2 rewards, but it still felt a bit less than the guide suggested. However, gold was insurance for his future survival, so he needed to save as much as possible. Just then, someone asked which group came in first. Li Huiyang was about to answer when the red-haired guy proudly declared that they were the first group. The results were clear, and there was no need to be upset. Someone else asked if they were really the first, and the red-haired guy arrogantly shot back, asking why they seemed angry about their victory. The person said they weren't, just curious, but before they could finish, the scene shifted to Li Huiyang, who thought the red-haired guy had forgotten that he'd been beaten by a monster. Meanwhile, other players looked at Li Huiyang with unfriendly eyes. Some people said it was surprising he got first place despite being only level 2. Others commented that Li Huiyang received 2,000 gold without doing anything and asked if he felt ashamed. Jiziel interrupted, saying that Li Huiyang had indeed done something, but Li Huiyang stopped her, saying it was okay because they wouldn't listen anyway. He decided he would have to prove himself to them. Amid the crowd, someone began clapping. It was Kim Junsong, a level 8 player. He said everyone needed to calm down and focus on surviving. We know he's an archer and one of the highest level players in the area. A swordsman agreed, saying they should encourage each other and continue fighting for those who had died. Other players began to cheer and motivate each other, saying they could do it. As they shouted in excitement, the blue flame turned red, and they all received a warning message. Lee Hoyoung, confused, wondered what was happening as the flame changed color. The loudspeaker announced that the survival rate of level 1 in Area C, 2567 was below average, so a penalty mission would be initiated. The loudspeaker continued, saying that a death mission would soon start and players were required to choose a candidate in their mind. The player with the most votes would undertake the death mission, and they had 5 minutes to vote. If they didn't choose anyone, they would automatically vote for themselves. The players realized that being voted for here meant death, so everyone anxiously looked around to choose someone to vote for. Jiziel suggested that if everyone voted for themselves, no one would have to do the death mission. However, someone else shouted that doing so could result in all of them having to do it. Another person yelled that there was no time to argue, time was ticking away. A girl pointed at Lee Hoyoung to vote. Jiziel saw this and said it was too cruel. Seo Juno, worried, approached Lee Hoyoung and apologized, saying they had to choose. Lee Hoyoung gave a forced smile, saying he didn't expect anything but felt confused because he didn't want to die. But Jiziel told everyone that it wasn't too late and that if everyone voted for themselves, they might avoid the death mission. However, Lee Hoyoung cut her off, saying that wouldn't work. Lee Heikel was right, and they didn't know if it would work. Besides, trust had already been broken. As time passed, the votes over Lee Hoyoung's head gradually increased. He was sure there were various reasons, but the main one was that he was the only low-level player there. They had lost the social concept that the strong should protect the weak, revealing their true natures as their masks fell. Jiziel asked the others how they could do such a thing to someone. One participant asked what they were supposed to do, as they'd die if they didn't vote. The girl arrogantly mentioned that he would surely die anyway at his level. Among them, the happiest person was the red-haired guy, who with a big grin told our protagonist he was sorry, mockingly calling him Sir. Then, the loudspeaker announced that all votes were cast, and the gate to the death mission was opening. As the gate fully opened, everyone began to murmur that it was real. While Jiziel worried for our protagonist, the red-haired guy laughed loudly, reminding everyone that his problem would be solved if Lee Hoyoung went. As Lee Hoyoung approached the gate, he thought to himself that the sacrificial lamb had been chosen and the altar prepared. The guilty and relieved faces behind him left him no choice but to walk up Golgotha. However, on top of Golgotha wasn't death. Because the guide had told him that participating in the death mission was recommended. He had a high chance of completing the mission, with satisfying rewards awaiting him. So, as he crossed the gate with a smile, he remarked that a sweet reward awaited him. After Lee Hoyoung entered the death mission, the others waited with their previous teammates. They were interrupted by Kim Junsong, who said that although brief, they had been comrades who took care of each other, and it was regrettable to part this way. However, the red-haired guy, with his usual attitude, said that Lee Hoyoung got what he deserved. Hearing this, Jiziel asked what he meant. The red-haired guy retorted that you could tell just by looking at Lee Hoyoung's level and that all he did was try to exploit the group while he led it. But Jiziel countered, asking what he was implying, since it was Lee Hoyoung's skills that had helped them complete the mission. The red-haired guy shouted, asking what skills they were talking about since Lee Hoyoung just got lucky with his plan. But Jiziel pointed out if he was sure that Lee Hoyoung hadn't saved him from death, leaving the red-haired guy speechless. He recalled what had happened and thought to himself that, looking back, Lee Hoyoung did have some skills, and it seemed he had one that allowed him to change the level he displayed. So, he wondered if he could return alive. Kim Se-jong heard this and said that personally, he hoped Lee Hoyoung was as good as Jiziel made him out to be. Because that way, at least he'd have a small chance of coming back. But Jiziel remembered Lee Hoyoung's words to her about letting them see with their own eyes. This made her wipe her tears and declare with conviction that she believed Lee Hoyoung would return safely, and she was sure of it. Kim Se-jong, hearing this, smiled and said he was sure he would too. We quickly shift scenes to find Lee Hoyoung in the Kobold village. Seeing the rather gloomy village, he remarked that it gave him chills but then smiled, thinking about the guide saying he was considering voting for himself. If things didn't go well, it looked like everything was going his way. But he recalled the red-haired guy's words and angrily muttered that it seemed he would need a private chat with him. Just then, the Kobold tribe's hunting party returned, and upon seeing their slaughtered comrades, they began roaring in anger. While noticing a larger kobold among them, the system notified him, death mission started. Kill the leader and the enraged hunting party avenging their fallen kin. Right after the announcement, the level 12 kobold leader started roaring, prompting the others to charge. But before they returned, the guide told Li Huiyang, the kobold leader is a dungeon monster and a level 12 creature. The kobold leader and the other kobolds are weak to poison. So, Li Huiyang quickly crushed an apple with his hand. As he coated his sword with poison, he thought that a level 12 monster leading the other kobolds was an almost insurmountable opponent. If it were someone else, they would accept their fate, but it would be different for him. After he had taken down all the low-level kobolds, he thought to himself that all the side characters were dealt with, leaving only the high-level monster in the death mission. He quickly charged at the high-level monster with his sword, but the monster dodged. Surprised at being evaded, he was shocked to realize the monster had such skills, which was expected of a high-level creature in a death mission. But just then, the high-level monster turned tail and ran at full speed. So, Li Huiyang chased after it, and while attacking the high-level monster, he wondered how it could be called a high-level monster. It seemed more like an extra stage that anyone could get through, so he comfortably prepared for the final blow, attacking the high-level monster from behind. However, the attack did nothing to the high-level monster, leaving Li Huiyang puzzled. At that moment, the high-level monster stared at the red moon, then quickly lunged with a sword, injuring Li Huiyang. We quickly switch scenes to the red-haired guy, who always arrogantly claimed they couldn't do anything about someone already dead. He, Kim Se-jong, would lead them through the remaining floors, but as the red-haired guy said this, Jizul prayed for our protagonist. The red-haired guy, seeing this, asked if she knew what death was, since clearly Li Huiyang was dead. He also asked why she was praying for him, or if she was praying for him to rest in peace. Jizul then shouted that even if the world was in such a state, he should at least have some conscience. She asked what the red-haired guy would do if Li Huiyang returned safely. The red-haired guy replied that there was no way he could come back to life. As the teleportation gate reappeared, Redhead asked Jizil if she planned to act that way until the end. But just then, someone shouted, "Is that the teleportation gate?" This surprised Jizil quite a bit, and then all the contestants turned to look at the gate where someone was stepping out. Everyone was shocked, and some were even delighted to see Li Huiyang, who was healing his wounds. The loudspeaker announced that the player who had undertaken the death quest had returned safely, and with a big grin, he said, "I'm back." But hold on, let's rewind a few minutes. The guide had warned our main character, be careful, the kobold leader's skills will increase when its eyes glow red. We then see Li Huiyang fighting the red-eyed monster leader. But with a significant wound, Li Huiyang started to retreat and got cornered by a tree. He tried to stop the bleeding himself and thought he just needed one good hit on the monster leader. Seeing the monster charge at him like a triceratops, he wondered how to land a hit. After dodging a powerful attack that pierced through a tree like it was tofu, Li Huiyang realized something. Even if a sword can't cut through a wall, a nail can pierce it. Maybe he had been thinking of the sword as just a slashing weapon. With determination in his eyes, he charged at the monster leader, adding his own weight to the blow. Just then, the monster leader dug its feet into the ground, leaped into the air, and attacked twice. But Li Huiyang, focusing all his strength on a single point, stabbed his sword through the monster leader. Seeing his plan succeed, he smiled. Thrust has been added to your basic sword skills. With the new skill added and having cleared the death quest, we return to the present. Someone started moving faster, and we see Jizil running toward Li Huiyang, shouting that she knew he could do it. But right then, she collided with someone and was knocked aside. While she was still bewildered, Li Huiyang was equally surprised to see Redhead hugging him and saying he believed MC would succeed, calling him brother. Redhead also added that a mere death quest couldn't stop his brother Li Huiyang, the strongest in the universe. However, Li Huiyang clenched his fist, wishing he could punch Redhead right then. If you've made it this far in the video, don't forget to leave a like, and if you enjoy this content, you can subscribe and hit the notification bell so YouTube can let you know when I post a new video. Let's continue with the summary. But just then, someone asked if he really completed the death quest. The person said they were glad to see MC safe, but if MC truly finished the quest, he should have gained a lot of experience. However, MC's level hadn't changed, causing other players to start murmuring that MC was still at level 2. While everyone continued to gossip about Li Huiyang's level, he angrily thought he was used to this. He recalled a challenge from his childhood and thought the world wanted the weak to remain weak. His teammates whispered that MC had passed the test. Someone else said maybe he cheated. People started mocking, saying MC was a pitiful orphan who would never be the top. Back to the present, people speculated that Li Huiyang had probably hidden somewhere and waited for a chance. Another person said this made sense, as at that level, MC couldn't have done anything, probably hiding in some well. Hearing these comments, Li Huiyang clenched his fists, thinking he'd had enough of these prejudiced people. Such folks were hard to change. Holding his head high, he thought about what to do next, but Jiziel interrupted, saying people shouldn't say such thoughtless things. She asked why they still doubted Li Huiyang when he had proven he survived the death quest. Right then, Redhead stepped up and shouted that Jiziel was right. Not only did people fail to throw a welcome party for his brother Li Huiyang, the strongest in the universe, but they also dared to spoil the mood. Redhead flexed his muscles and asked if people had lost their minds, making Li Huiyang think Redhead seemed the most insane. But anyway, that made Li Huiyang feel a bit better. He needed everyone to survive in this tower, and to do that, he had to show them something convincing. Li Huiyang called for everyone's attention and said he needed to show them something, then drew out a sword. Unbeatable sword. Rank, rare. Trait, increases attack power plus 15. Everyone saw it was a rare weapon with high attack power, saying it was truly a cheat weapon. The girl holding the sword said there was no information about this old longsword. But Kim Junsong told Li Huiyang that keeping the poison apple, as Jiziel had said, showed that MC was truly extraordinary. However, Li Huiyang said he was just lucky. Kim Junsong replied that a good item like the reward was precious, as it could help everyone survive. But Li Huiyang asked back if he was talking about helping everyone survive. If so, it seemed people had forgotten. The fact was they almost pushed him to death, which made everyone fall silent, especially Redhead, who began looking away. But Seo Junho bit his lip and told Li Huiyang he was sorry. He bowed slightly and justified that it was inevitable. But in the end, it was just selfishness because he thought as long as it wasn't him, everything would be fine. Even knowing that voting for Li Huiyang, the lowest level player, was like attacking him. He bowed his head and said they pushed MC into a death situation to survive, and he was truly sorry. With tears, he said he was glad MC had returned safely. While Li Huiyang remained silent, the arrogant girl asked why they had to go this far since someone had to go anyway. She added that Li Huiyang had returned with a rare item, so everything was fine. Seo Junho, hearing this, asked her, "How can you say that? Don't you feel any remorse?" The girl replied, "You have no right to say that since you were the first to vote for Li Huiyang." At that moment, our main character interrupted the conversation, saying that the reason he drew the sword was not to blame them but to prevent this from happening again. Because they realized during the death quest voting that the tower was trying to divide them. It was creating mistrust among people, causing conflicts, and perhaps enjoying seeing them on the path to doom. As everyone stood silent, surprised, Li Huiyang continued, saying he believed his survival of the death quest was an opportunity. Because he had shown that his actions could challenge the tower's intentions. Hearing this, Kim Junsong asked him what his plans were for the future. Li Huiyang replied that he would find a way for most people to survive and continue climbing the tower. They would climb higher, and one day, when they reached the top, they could reclaim their lives. These words sparked hope in everyone's hearts. But just then, Jiziel shouted that to achieve this, everyone must unite. Seo Junho, witnessing everything, teared up and exclaimed that Li Huiyang was a generous person and they shouldn't judge him based on his level. However, right at that moment, a rabbit appeared and said that unfortunately, this is a survival game. Everyone looked at the rabbit and asked, "Didn't it leave? Is it giving out stat points this time?" But hearing the rabbit, Li Huiyang asked, "Survival game means?" Before he could finish, the rabbit said, "Quick on the uptake, aren't we?" Then, with a more menacing look, it announced that the level 2 mission would be a royal battle between the 16 players here, making everyone panic. However, with a friendly smile, the rabbit said that because it's a low level, it's just a light appetizer for everyone, so they should give it their best shot. It then explained the rules. The first rule was that the level 2 mission would have 16 players and 16 clones, making a total of 32. The second rule was they had to eliminate all the clones, but the clones not only had the same stats but also the same memories, so it wouldn't be easy. And most importantly, the third rule was there would be no reward for players killing clones, but if a player killed another player, they would receive stat points and gold. In other words, this mission might be an opportunity for them, but the players, hearing this, thought they were basically being told to kill each other. However, just then, the rabbit prepared to snap its fingers and said that if no one was killed within 30 minutes, everyone would be immediately summoned back to the lobby and face a great disaster. So the rabbit snapped its fingers, opening a large portal from which a gigantic hand emerged. As a huge monster appeared from the portal, its level didn't even show, causing fear and horror among everyone, including our main character. The monster threw a punch, leaving a huge crater on the ground. Li Huiyang, who dodged the punch, quickly looked at the monster and thought to himself that it was truly a disaster. He trembled, asking if this was real since they had just passed the first floor. He wondered how they could fight this thing. Meanwhile, a girl screamed for help, not wanting to die. Our main character realized everyone was panicking, but the monster quickly targeted another player. However, before the attack could land, our main character, with incredible speed, saved that player and said that the level 2 mission hadn't even started yet. He asked the rabbit what the hell it was doing. The main character saw the rabbit sitting in a fetal position and thought maybe the rabbit was staging a drama to make them take the mission seriously. This meant it was just a show of what would happen. He concluded that the rabbit had no intention of harming them. However, the monster attacked again, injuring 3 players. Kim Junsong and the red-haired guy began to fight back but couldn't do anything to the monster. Lee Hoyoung realized this monster wasn't just for scaring them, it was really trying to kill them. As Yeo Juno treated the injured, our main character thought no one had died so far, but that wouldn't last. The monster started preparing another attack, and Lee Hoyoung shouted for everyone to fall back. He thought to himself that it wasn't the time to worry about what others thought, because if they couldn't stop it, they'd all die. He used all his strength, combining his sword and thrust. The players saw Lee Hoyoung had defeated the monster, and they were all surprised. But the most surprised was the main character himself, because he couldn't believe he had defeated it. As the players fell silent, they quickly began to cheer Lee Hoyoung's name. But he looked at his sword and wondered if it was really that strong. The system notified him that he would be in an exhausted state for 3 minutes for exceeding his limits. He started to collapse, thinking it was over. After a few minutes, he opened his eyes and the system notified him that the exhaustion state had been lifted. His teammates, seeing him wake up, breathed a sigh of relief, and Yeo Juno, with teary eyes, said she couldn't believe Lee Hoyoung could be so humble despite being so strong. Even his final fainting act was perfect. As Lee Hoyoung struggled to get up, he asked what had happened to the great disaster. The rabbit, with a big smile, said it had been pushed back just to give them an idea of what was coming. The main character was quite surprised because he had been right. The rabbit continued, saying it wasn't very interesting because everyone was too friendly despite almost dying. The rabbit slowly left, saying the thing about a death every 30 minutes meant the person next to you could be your killer. Everyone was worried, while the rabbit said it had delivered the message and bid farewell. Lee Hoyoung gritted his teeth, wondering if there was no other way. After a few minutes, Yeo Juno said that if they didn't find the imposter, they'd have to kill each other. Another player said they needed to find a way to deal with it. Someone suggested marking everyone, but the imposter shared memories, so they didn't know what to do. Lee Hoyoung, hearing the conversation, called everyone over and said he had an idea. He said that in this mission, only he would do anything while everyone else stayed at the highest point of the second floor. If anyone did otherwise, that person was the imposter and they had to team up to eliminate them. A player named Sechin, level 9, a former Special Forces member, asked Lee Hoyoung if that was his plan. A girl said that the main character was quite good despite his low level but asked why they should follow his plan. Lee Hoyoung seriously asked if she remembered what the rabbit had said. There was no reward for killing the imposter but points and gold for killing other players. That meant the person next to you could be your killer. He said he didn't want to let the tower control them and this was the best solution. The girl was dissatisfied, but Kim Junsong agreed, thinking it could minimize losses. He asked the main character if there was a way to distinguish the imposter. Lee Hoyoung smiled and said, of course there was. The scene shifted to the beginning of the second floor mission with 16 players and 16 imposters. The red-haired guy couldn't believe asking everyone to gather at the top was wise and cursed because he hated mountain climbing. Just then, he spotted someone and tried to hide. MC looked behind a tree and saw the red-haired guy preparing to attack. He called out, "You're so big, hiding behind a tree won't help." The red-haired guy saw it was his brother, laughed loudly, "Just my bro." But while the red-haired guy was saying he thought it was the imposter, he was immediately cut in half by MC. The scene quickly shifted to a few minutes earlier, with our main character looking at a notification from the system guide, saying, the first player to achieve a certain sensitivity score will receive the ultimate sense skill. As a reward for being the first to achieve it, this skill would help identify the imposter. Seeing the notification, he was a bit scared but still confident he could tell who was fake. When the notification window appeared at the right moment, he began spending gold to increase his sensitivity score. You are the first to reach 50 sensitivity points. You've unlocked Supreme Sense. Your 5 senses will enhance dramatically, allowing you to gather detailed information about others within a certain range. Our MC looked at his hands, realizing that after spending half his gold, he finally had this skill. Everything around him seemed to heighten, and it felt incredible. But just then, he heard mumbling and realized it was the red-haired guy complaining about having to follow the MC. Despite being 500 meters away, he heard it clearly, which shocked him. Soon after, he detected a foul odor and realized the red-haired guy was an imposter. Flash forward to the present, with the fake red-haired guy now cut in half, the MC recalled that imposters acted real until they died. Despite feeling guilty for killing the imposter, he trusted his ability to discern them and hoped everyone would follow the plan thanks to Kim Junsong's agreement. Yet, he couldn't predict what would happen and hoped nothing bad would occur before they reached the map's peak. At that moment, the system announced, a player has died. Current number of members, 15 players, 15 imposters. The MC couldn't believe his eyes and wondered if the player died by an imposter or another player. Unsure of what happened, he quickly ran to find the killer. Climbing a tree for a better view, the MC cursed when he saw an imposter kill another player. Quickly, he leaped down, attacking the imposter and inflicting several cuts. The system announced, an imposter has died. Current number of members, 15 players, 14 imposters. 14 players, 14 imposters. Observing the imposter, Lee Hoyoung thought he'd expected the imposter to be the murderer, but it differed from his prediction. Nonetheless, he was glad to have eliminated it before more harm was done. Right then, Kim Junsong emerged from the bushes, gravely injured, asking if it was really Lee Hoyoung. Collapsing, he told our MC to be wary of his own imposter before passing out. A few minutes later, Lee Hoyoung was helping Kim Junsong move. Kim Junsong, struggling, expressed regret, saying if he hadn't let the imposter escape, others wouldn't have died. He was frustrated, thinking about someone resembling him harming others, and felt terrible. Lee Hoyoung reassured him it wasn't his fault, they were all victims of the tower and should focus on escaping safely. At that moment, he saw Iseo and Seo Juno. Iseo sighed with relief, saying they were both safe and worried upon hearing a player had died. Seo Juno echoed her concern, unable to believe 2 players had died. Iseo started using magic, asking if Kim Junsong was injured and needed healing. However, our MC drew his sword, warning Kim Junsong to step back because both of them were imposters. Hearing this, their expressions changed. The fake Seo Juno attacked, asking if Lee Hoyoung had a grudge against the death missions. Kim Junsong told Lee Hoyoung to handle Iseo, wondering why the imposters dared to appear boldly before him, especially when one of them, with Iseo's memories, knew how strong he was. But just then, the fake Iseo attacked from behind. The MC dodged just in time. Immediately, the fake Seo Juno exploited the situation to attack Lee Hoyoung. He dodged quickly, leaping into the air, and as he fell, an arrow aimed at his head hit a tree as he narrowly avoided it. Observing the shooter, he saw Kim Junsong with a strange expression, saying it was a pity, thought he had the final blow. As the fake advanced toward Kim Junsong, the scene flashed back to a few minutes earlier when Lee Hoyoung had killed an imposter, but Kim Junsong had seen him. Kim Junsong laughed as he pulled out an arrow, revealing he'd once been a fisherman and started calling himself the hunter, beginning a manhunt. Returning to the present, Kim Junsong told the MC that he had spoken in a local dialect out of excitement, asking how Lee Hoyoung felt, betrayed, useless, or angry, then laughed loudly. But Lee Hoyoung smiled, saying he'd been waiting for Kim Junsong to reveal his true nature and found him crazier than expected. Kim Junsong replied that he must have known he'd be stabbed in the back. Lee Hoyoung said he could see others' status and recognized Kim Junsong as a murderer due to his high stats. Kim Junsong laughed, saying he had become more interesting over time and asked if he had received a boon from the tower, as he was very jealous. Lee Hoyoung asked why Kim Junsong did this, killing for golden stats. Kim Junsong laughed, saying in this world, killing wasn't punished but rewarded, how could he not kill? Reflecting on the past, Lee Hoyoung wondered if there had been a situation that made him act this way, but he was wrong. Kim Junsong was simply a psychopathic killer. As the imposter attacked, Lee Hoyoung dodged and sliced the arrow in half. The second arrow aimed at his head was dodged, hitting a tree and making a large hole. Observing Kim Junsong, he realized he had many tricks up his sleeve. Looking back at the imposters, he saw a combination of a warrior, mage, and archer, with no weaknesses. He told Kim Junsong he didn't know how he convinced the imposters, but it seemed he had prepared well. Kim Junsong laughed, saying to catch a big fish, he had to do this. He thought Lee Hoyoung would fall easily but found him quite resilient. He manipulated the arrow in his hand with a sly smile. This is much better since I can slowly watch Lee Hoyoung struggle to death, he said, drawing his bow and commanding the imposters, what are you waiting for? Time to lift the net. The imposters attacked, but with a serious face, Lee Hoyoung activated his supreme sense, allowing him to see everything around him. As the opponents approached, Lee Hoyoung examined their stats, realizing they were a highly balanced group. However, against overwhelming power, even a good formation meant nothing. One imposter fell, then another. The current count, 14 players, 11 imposters. Seeing the MC easily defeat the imposters, Kim Junsong began to tremble, kneeling and crying, begging for his life, claiming he'd been obsessed with the rewards and lost his mind momentarily. He was even amazed by Lee Hoyoung's skill, saying he had crossed a line he shouldn't have. Suddenly, he attacked Lee Hoyoung from behind, but Lee Hoyoung quickly cut him in half. As Kim Junsong's upper body flew into the air, he cursed that his trap was meant to catch a big fish, not a small one. Current count, 13 players, 11 imposters. With his sword covered in blood, Lee Hoyoung told himself he had to kill a living person. But just then, the system announced that the player who accepted the Star Assassin challenge had died. He now had a chance to become the Star Assassin in place of that player. If he accepted the challenge, he would receive enhanced stats and support from the imposters. Becoming the Star Assassin would grant significant benefits. A mist surrounded Lee Hoyoung, forming into an imposter who extended a hand as the system asked, "Do you want to accept the challenge?" Lee Hoyoung looked at the prompt, understanding that this was why Kim Junsong could command the imposters. The benefits of becoming the Star Assassin included legendary grade equipment, legendary grade skills, rapid stat increase, and the exclusive Star Assassin title. Seeing the benefits, Lee Hoyoung wondered why the rewards were so outrageous. But he remembered what happened with the imposters, realizing that even though he didn't like killing them, he could do it because they weren't real humans. But now, he had to face killing real people and possibly deal with another challenger wanting to become the Star Assassin. He looked at the announcement and decided to pass on the challenge. No way he was going to end up like that nutcase Kim Junsong. Then Lee Hoyoung went to meet the other players. A redhead with a familiar face asked why he was late. Lee Hoyoung unsheathed his sword and muttered to himself that he should go crazy, then told everyone he appreciated them following his suggestions despite the difficulty. Some players stood next to their doppelgangers, wondering what to do next. Someone asked if Lee Hoyoung could really tell the fakes apart. Lee Hoyoung said he could, but just then, someone thanked everyone for following his lead. As that person approached, Lee Hoyoung turned and saw it was his double. The others exclaimed there were two Lee Hoyoungs and asked who to trust. Someone wondered if Lee Hoyoung had anticipated this. The two Lee Hoyoungs stared each other down. The real one thought the situation was a mess and wished he had killed the fake earlier, but Kim Junsong ruined his plans. Now it was a chess match between him and his doppelganger. Suddenly, a player demanded an explanation, not knowing who to believe. Lee Hoyoung remembered killing the fakes and thought if he revealed the identities of the 5 he had killed, he could prove he was genuine. As he prepared to speak, his double also named the fakes, except for Seo Juno and Lee Seol, claiming to have killed them, confusing everyone. While Lee Hoyoung tried to prove his authenticity, the double took the lead, urging everyone to think carefully. He reminded Lee Seol and the redhead they had built trust from the first level and identified their doubles early on. Lee Hoyoung thought the double made the first move, but everyone wondered if it was a trap. A girl behind them asked if it was too obvious, but Lee Seol said it wasn't guaranteed. As everyone pondered, the double claimed if the fakes were right, Kim Junsong was a fake, meaning Lee Hoyoung had killed the real one. Kim Junsong, a kind leader who inspired them, was now a martyr. The double questioned if they could trust Lee Hoyoung, who killed such a person. The double's words cast doubt on the real Lee Hoyoung. Smiling, the double thought he didn't know how Kim Junsong truly died but felt confident. He pointed at Lee Hoyoung, implying he confessed. Desperately trying to convince everyone he was real, calling the other fake, players began drawing weapons. The girl shouted, "No more talking, let's thrash this fraud and finish the rest." But the redhead yelled, "Ridiculous. That makes us no better than him." Lee Seol said they shouldn't judge based on one side. Seo Juno agreed, advising caution. Others argued time was running out, as a disaster loomed in minutes. Lee Hoyoung silently praised his double and himself, thinking the double made a strong move. Lee Hoyoung approached and told the double, "You're right, I killed Kim Junsong." The double asked, "Surrendering already? Disappointing to call me fake." Lee Hoyoung, planning, knew the double missed something. He drew his sword and attacked Kim Junsong's double. The strike didn't land. The double asked, "What are you doing? Nothing left to say?" Just then, Seo Juno asked, "If Kim Junsong is a traitor, what does that mean?" Realizing Lee Hoyoung had set a beneficial situation, he recalled if a double killed someone, it announced a player's death. A double wouldn't self-reveal immediately. If Lee Hoyoung identified and eliminated a double, he proved himself. Lee Hoyoung claimed Kim Junsong was a traitor, asking, "Did you kill a human?" Lee Hoyoung confirmed, calling Kim Junsong a demon in disguise, waiting for a chance. A girl, recalling Kim Junsong saving her, angrily attacked Lee Hoyoung but got shot by Kim Junsong's double. A player was dead. Current members, 12 players, 11 doubles. Lee Hoyoung cursed as Kim Junsong's double still acted. The double laughed, pleased with Lee Hoyoung's reaction. Just then, Se-chang killed Kim Junsong's double. A double dead. Members now, 12 players, 10 doubles. Se-chang apologized for doubting Lee Hoyoung, asking the next move. Realizing Kim Junsong was truly a fake, they believed Lee Hoyoung. Quickly arming themselves, they asked for instructions. A player vowed to follow Lee Hoyoung's lead. Reflecting on past struggles, Lee Hoyoung smiled, felt déjà vu, and confidently shared his final plan. But his double lunged, saying it was all or nothing. Lee Hoyoung dodged, telling everyone to use all their gold to boost stats. They complied, empowered, easily defeating the doubles, completing the task without more losses. Se-chang cursed Kim Junsong, noting they could have survived without losses if not for him. Lee Hoyoung felt disappointed, aiming to clear level 2 without casualties. He worried about other areas, fearing worse without leaders like him.
If someone chooses the path of a star assassin, the situation will be very complicated.
He thought, despite struggles, with trust, he'd save as many as possible. Se-chang thanked Lee Hoyoung for their survival. Lee Hoyoung credited their teamwork. Se-chang guessed Lee Hoyoung, still at level 2 despite his contributions, had a special skill. Lee Hoyoung thought Se-chang's caution and decisiveness would be valuable ahead. Se-chang apologized for doubting and underestimating Lee Hoyoung. The other players also apologized, but Lee Hoyoung waved it off, saying it wasn't necessary. The redhead laughed loudly, saying they were terrible at recognizing someone's potential and should be more like him. Seol chimed in, claiming she was the first to see how extraordinary Lee Hoyoung was. Seo Juno, biting his fist and crying, said he wanted to apologize once more.
Se-chang told our protagonist that it might sound crazy after everything that happened, but he wanted Lee Hoyoung to lead them from now on.
Lee Hoyoung was surprised but quickly agreed with a smile. Flashback to 5 minutes before the mission ended, the system announced, current members, 12 players, 1 fake. The players realized only 1 fake remained and started searching for it. Lee Hoyoung approached a bush and swiftly took out the last fake. A fake has been killed. You have completed the mission. Back in the present, the loudspeaker announced that gold rewards based on contributions would be sent out. The players were excited about the gold, but the redhead laughed and proudly showed off his 2,000 gold. While he was boasting, Lee Hoyoung smiled, thinking everyone got gold for following his plan, and he was happy they were rewarded too. He had received 12,500 gold. Right then, the system announced, since you have received over 10,000 gold, your shop rank will be upgraded. He looked at the new shop, noting that buying rare items required a higher shop rank. But for now, he needed to upgrade his basic swordsman level to level 3. After the announcement, he remembered the disaster level monster. Although he didn't know how to use it, he had used an advanced sword technique and fainted afterward. If he could use that sword technique for only 5,000 gold, it was a bargain. With that, he completed his shopping. At that moment, Seol received a notification. Player Lee Hoyoung has shared 1,500 gold with you. She was surprised and asked our protagonist why he gave her the gold. Lee Hoyoung replied that she could keep it, because during the fight with the kobolds and the fakes, they wouldn't have won without her. In a world where people had to kill to survive, the reason they could smile and trust each other was because they could help one another. He said it was all thanks to her. Seol was silent for a few seconds after hearing this, then told the protagonist she would become stronger. Her healing skill leveled up. Player Lee Hoyoung has shared 200 gold with you. The redhead saw the notification, looked at his brother, and said they should keep doing good deeds. As he walked away, he thought that since the redhead was quite energetic, it would be helpful to make him stronger. But just then, he was called by the redhead, who, with a strange expression, said that his every wish was now a command, and he just needed to say what he needed. Lee Hoyoung quickly drew his sword, thinking it was time to test his level 3 basic swordsmanship.